assuming a weaker future economy than under Labor, and also one that sees households relying longer and more on petrol cars and gas heating, just to name a few, the cost of which you haven't actually included in your model. How is that credible?
So let's be clear about what we have modelled. Frontier Economics has done the work independently, and they have modelled the integrated system plan. And so they basically modelled what Labor has been modelling. So if people say some things have been excluded, such as the cost of EVs and home batteries, well, that's because Labor's modelling excludes that. And so in order for us to compare their model to our model, of course, we had to adopt some of those basic assumptions. Secondly, then, when it comes to the ambition for the Australian economy, if you have a look at what the assumptions are about Labor's plan, Labor is assuming that 98% of all new vehicle sales will be EVs. They are basically assuming that the Australian people will be forced to behave in the way that the Labor Party want them to behave. We have a very different approach to that. We can still reach net zero by respecting the choices of the Australian people. Now, the increase in electricity use under the coalition, we have adopted AEMO's recommended scenario of the progressive scenario. So Labor thinks it can go far higher. Labor thinks, for example, that 25% of the electricity generation today will be needed to produce green hydrogen within the next couple of decades. So Labor is basing their entire rollout on a fantasy. But here's the problem. They're locking Australia into a spend. Once money is spent, it can't be unspent. They are going to be rolling out tens of thousands of kilometres of transmission lines. We've already heard from the Minister that he wants 22,000 solar panels installed a day, 40 wind turbines a month, all the way through to 2030. Basically carpeting Australia. Why? Because Labor believes they can force the hand of every Australian to behave the way Labor wants them to behave, to electrify exactly how Labor wants them to electrify. And what happens with an overbuild is someone has to pay for it, and it's typically consumers or taxpayers. Now, the approach that we have taken, again, is a demand profile for electricity that the market operator has also recommended is very feasible, one that's far more realistic, and one that actually has a more ambitious growth in energy use than our historical past in Australia. And so that's the difference. Ours is realistic, theirs is a fantasy.